It's with pleasure that I introduce Cris Kerr from Australia. Cris has been with me every step of the way, helping and supporting me. We've never actually met, but she is one of the closest friends I have. And thank you very much, Cris, for all your help over the years. It has been much appreciated with all the e-books and things that we have done together to get the word out there. Could you please tell me of your experience of LDN as a big advocate?
I set up a website in 2001 to collect health success stories because where I come from was that I've always believed in the value of patient testimony. And thankfully, or not thankfully, thanks to a car accident, I actually had the money to do that. So I set up a website back in 2001 and had a database so people could lodge their stories and they could be shared online for free, and everyone could look at stories where other people had achieved success. And then in 2003, I received a story about Low Dose Naltrexone, and then another, and that really piqued my curiosity, and so I went in search of more information on Low Dose Naltrexone, and what I found astounded me, and I just could not believe that other people had not heard of this. And the thought occurred to me very soon thereafter that if I were to focus on low-dose naltrexone, it may very well provide me the best opportunity to prove that patient testimony has value, because it was the best treatment that I knew of at the time that was not a mainstream treatment, and that patients were saying was working for them and no one was listening. So that's the background to it. That's what convinced me, and that's why I've put so much effort into it over the years.
From all the evidence that you've been given, what is your thoughts on LDN?
I was expecting that there would be some type of problem that I hadn't yet discovered, that this could not be anywhere near as good as it appeared to be. And it is now 8 years after that first story, almost 8 years since that was lodged, and I'm still to this day convinced that LDN is everything I thought it was back then. So that's 8 years of collecting stories, editing stories, building health case studies, talking to doctors, working in low-dose naltrexone forums and chat groups. And over all that period of time, I have never heard of anyone being harmed by LDN, and I've only ever heard good things about it. And even when people don't continue with it, it's not because it hurt them in any way or they suffered in any way. It's just because they've just decided that they don't want to take it for one reason or another. It's just amazing.
I know that you do follow-ups, Cris, annually, asking people to update their stories. What is the general trend in these updates?
Actually, this was something we talked about when I interviewed you, and that is, intriguingly, that people forget the benefits that they've achieved with LDN. So they tend to forget how bad it was beforehand, and so they tend to get less excited over time and are less enamoured and all those sorts of things. But LDN still doesn't stop working for them. It doesn't matter whether they're enamoured with it or not. LDN keeps working, and this is where I think it puts paid to what people would call the placebo effect. They often try to link with LDN, even when people are out of love with LDN and they just keep taking it, it still keeps doing its thing.
So where do you see LDN going?
I think that LDN is going to become a mainstream treatment. I would not like to see it over the counter. I think mainly because of the seriousness of the types of conditions that it can help, and I think that should always be through your local doctor or your specialist or whoever it might be. But I think it's going to take a groundswell to do it. It's not going to come from mainstream, and it's going to take people pressure, patient pressure, to get it in there.
I mean, it's going to have to go through clinical trials.
Well, not necessarily. And I think that anyone who's familiar with my book and the case studies in there would probably know where my head is in terms of the way LDN could be trialled. And in your country, in England, you have a National Health Service and you have e-health and what have you. Mm-hmm. We in Australia are only just starting to go down that track. Here, my vision for our e-health system here, which I am hoping to get other people to think about, is the inclusion of patient testimony. And by including patient testimony, the evidence will be collected in a structured way. So the evidence to make sure that other people get opportunity to try LDN will be there. And if we have that built into our e-health system from the very beginning, it won't just be LDN. I'm sure I'm quite convinced actually that there are hundreds of treatments out there that other people should be hearing about and are not hearing about that may be of benefit to them. We talk about LDN, but I'm sure there are others. And for that reason, I hope Australia will support patient testimony included into our e-health system from the outset. And they'll be essentially doing what I've been struggling to do here with 50 case studies and people's memories. So it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Once that e-health system is up and running and people start to record their information, then you have it there in black and white. Oh, heavens, you can't ask for better than that in terms of providing the data as evidence. And why run a clinical trial when the evidence is already there?
When is all this going to start, Cris?
In Australia, they are looking at building their e-health system frameworks over the next couple of years. We're early down the track at the moment. They're looking at healthcare identifiers at the moment and launching basic systems this year. That is, by basic, I mean trying to reduce the number of medication errors and prescription errors, so linking doctors with pharmacists and hospitals and things like that. Where I'm trying to contribute to that is to getting them to think past that and to a long-term complete patient record that has full potential to help improve patient outcomes. So from the outset include structured patient contribution to that record so that the evidence will build. And there are lots of really good reasons for that. For example, a doctor will prescribe a medicine and on the record that he's providing, it would appear the patient was prescribed medication and took a medication, but the patient may very well go away. They may not be able to afford to fill a prescription. They may find that when they take that medicine in a couple of days, they're nauseous. They stop taking it immediately. So this is the kind of data we really need to capture that isn't being captured that could be with patient contribution.
Well, that's really interesting. I shall look forward to seeing how that pans out. I mean, Australia is such a massive country, isn't it? I mean, it's huge. I can remember a friend of mine who's Australian sent a postcard and Europe was superimposed over top of Australia, and it just then made me realise just how big a country it is. I mean, it's not as highly populated as most countries, but it is a very big country, and there are some prescribing doctors there in Australia, as you know, but it would be good to get more on board, wouldn't it?
I have thought with that. Here in Australia, we have, there probably are only a handful that I know of who have prescribed Low Dose Naltrexone, but our laws and regulations here are straight on to doctors doing anything that's not based on clinical trials and what have you, and they're pulled up very quickly, and so I'm having a great deal of difficulty getting anyone to actually talk about it or admit they prescribe it or anything like that. So I can find out that there are doctors prescribing it. That's about as far as I can get.
Okay, is anything else you'd like to add, Cris?
I wish I had several of your Dr. Dilhulis, etc. over here. That would be very nice. You really just need that first person to speak up and do something, and it just breaks the ice. And I think that what we really need to be wary of is that, and I have been wary of over many years now, is that we cannot forget that Low Dose Naltrexone is, if it starts to be taken by a larger majority of people, it will create a threat to certain markets, and so we have to be very careful that that threat does not make people act in a way that would shut it all down.
Well, as I said before, Cris, I really do appreciate all the help and support that you give to LDN, and I'm sure there are many people out there who have benefited through all your hard work and efforts.
I hope someone reads the book. Thanks, Linda.